Welcome, everybody. My name is Lucas Lomelino. I'm the head of the institutional relationships of Fundação Estudar. It's such a pleasure to host this event and bring to you this huge partner of ours, ETS. The Fundação Estudar was born 30 years ago with the mission to create the best opportunities for young people who can act as protagonists and make changes in Brazil. We have three main fronts of work presenting our work here in Brazil. The first one is the Leaders Program, in which we select young people that are searching for a graduate, undergraduate, or MBA and need help with a scholarship and networking. And the second one, the Escola de Liderança platform, where we deliver a lifelong learning experience about career, soft skills, and job opportunities. And the last one, but definitely not the least, the portal Estudar Fora, which is the biggest portal in Brazil about this theme, and where we make partnerships with universities, colleges, and important institutions too, as ETS itself, right? Because we always believe that studying abroad is a means of improving the Brazilian young people, as all of are here. If you want to learn more about all these possibilities with us, most of them free, by the way, you can access our website or social media. And I thank you so much for that, because it's really important to us to have your trust. Now, I want to introduce to you our special guest, Faye Weidner. Faye has extensive experience in English language learning and assessment and holds degrees in linguistics and intercultural communication. Her professional background includes teaching English, developing content for K-12 and higher education language assessments, including the TOEFL Ibt, and developing materials for digital language learning platforms. In her current role nowadays, Faye manages TOEFL test preparation products, including the official TOEFL Ibt prep course. First, we are going to see Faye's presentation, okay? And after that, we are going to have like 20 minutes of Q&A. So I invite you all to send us questions through the YouTube chat, okay? You can send in Portuguese too, and we translate to Faye, no problem at all. So I'm going to try to select the best questions for Faye tonight, okay? Faye, welcome, and thank you so much for accepting this invitation. It's a huge pleasure to meet you. The stage is yours. Enjoy a lot, guys.
Thank you so much, Lucas, and thank you for having me. It's such an exciting opportunity to be here with you and have this opportunity to share a little bit about TOEFL, what it is, how you can get ready for it, ultimately how it can support you in studying abroad and achieving your goals. So I will go ahead and share my screen. I have some slides I'll be showing.
Perfect.
So do you mind just confirming you can see it? We're good? Okay, excellent. Great. So yeah, I'll be sharing with you tonight some information about the TOEFL Ibt, the test, and how to prepare for it. So we'll start kind of broad and work our way to get narrower. So I'll start with some general information about TOEFL testing. We'll look at the TOEFL Ibt test in a little more detail, and then we'll get into preparation resources that will help make you feel ready to take the test. And we'll talk about how to make a strategic plan for preparing that really is customized to you and helps you meet your needs. And we'll look at a couple examples of what that might look like in the real world. So starting with the world of TOEFL, there are a couple different TOEFL testing options. I'm sharing a couple of them tonight. So you have here the TOEFL Ibt and TOEFL Essentials tests. So both of these tests are used for purposes like immigration and university admissions. So study abroad, which I know many people with us right now are interested in doing. They both assess the 4 core language skills in English, so listening, reading, speaking, writing. And they both use our best-in-class scoring, the combination of highly trained raters and also highly trained artificial intelligence. The main difference between these two tests is that while TOEFL IBT is 100% focused on academic English, the TOEFL Essentials test has kind of a 50-50 split of testing academic English as well as more general English proficiency. And you can see that's kind of reflected in the length. So the TOEFL IBT takes about 3 hours and Essentials is about an hour and a half. So tonight we'll be focusing on the TOEFL IBT. So you might be thinking, okay, there's this TOEFL IBT thing. Why should I take it? Right? So if you're here, it's probably because you're interested in studying abroad in some capacity. And so one of the great things about the TOEFL is that it's very recognized and trusted by university admissions officers. They're well aware of the rigorous standards of the test, of the quality, the the scores that are being reported, their accuracy, their reflection of your skills. And so submitting TOEFL test scores with your application helps make you a stronger applicant. We also have data showing that people who take the TOEFL, 90% of them, over 90% of them, get into their first or second choice university. And finally, because the test is built around the kinds of actual tasks that you'll need to do when you reach that university environment, by taking the TOEFL and preparing for it and doing well on it, you're not just saying, okay, I can take this test. You're saying, I can do these real life tasks that I'll need to do when I get to my university setting in English. So you're really setting yourself up for success. And additionally, even if you're not planning on going to an English-speaking country, but you still need to show English language proficiency for whatever program you're applying to, the good news is that TOEFL is accepted and preferred worldwide. So whether you're looking at a destination like the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, where English is the language that's spoken in the countries and the language of instruction, or if maybe you're looking at a situation where you'll be in a country where English is not the spoken language every day, but it is the language of instruction, you still can count on the TOEFL to have you covered for your application. All right, I'll go through a few features of the TOEFL IBT. I know I've talked a little bit about what it's for, what it covers. These are some of my favorite things about it. So a nice convenience is that you can take the TOEFL IBT either at a test center if you want that in-test center experience, or you can take it at home if you would rather not have to go to a test center, maybe you don't have one nearby, or you're just more comfortable at home. You can also register up to 2 days in advance of a test date. We do recommend registering a little further out than that so that you can prepare and take time to get ready, plan out your test, those kinds of things. But if need be, you can register up to 2 days right before a test date. And you can also retest within 3 days if you need to. Other features, looking at scoring. One nice thing about the TOEFL IBT is that when you finish your test, whether you're taking it at home in the test center, you'll see your preliminary reading and listening scores right away. So you get that instant feedback, that instant information, and then your speaking and writing scores, as well as your full official scores, will get reported back to you in as little as 4 days. Finally, in terms of scoring, something that I think is super helpful, a lot of people like this, is the My Best Scores feature. So the way this works is if you take the TOEFL more than once, you can combine your section scores to build your best score, your super score. So, maybe you take the test once and you do really well on the first few sections, and, maybe maybe you didn't eat enough breakfast or something, and you get to writing and you're really burned out and you don't do so well. Let's say then you decide to retest and you do much better on the writing section. You can combine that higher writing score with your other scores to show your skills. All right, I'll show here a little video with an overview of the structure and content. So you'll get a little break from my voice and you'll hear our narrator here. So let's go ahead and play this.
Before you take your TOEFL Ibt test, make sure you understand how it is structured. The test has 4 sections: reading, listening, speaking, and writing, and takes about 3 hours. First is the reading section. It has 3 academic reading passages, each with 10 multiple choice questions. Next is the listening section. It has 5 listening passages. 3 are academic lectures with 6 questions each, and 2 are campus conversations with 5 questions each. Your test may include additional unscored questions for reading or listening, but never both. Then there is a 10-minute break. After the break are the speaking and writing sections. In the speaking section, there are 4 tasks, and you speak your responses into the microphone. The writing section has 2 essays that you type into the computer, or write on paper, depending on the testing option you chose. All 4 sections use real academic content, so you can prove you are ready for the English language demands of a university.
All right, so there's our quick overview of what is actually in the test. All right, so to wrap up the test info, I'll just give a quick overview of what you can expect on test day. So whether you decide to take the TOEFL Ibt test in a test center or at home, you can expect kind of the same basic procedure. So in both cases, you'll be checking in, showing your identification. There will be a security inspection by staff to make sure you're not bringing in any extra notes or anything, or using the camera if you're at home. And if you're in the test center, all of the equipment is provided for you. So the computer, the headset, you have your own test station. And if you're at home, of course, you'll be using your own computer, camera, microphone, speaker. And in both cases, there is a proctor that you can ask for help. So whether you're in person or taking it virtually at home, you will have that help if needed. I should probably mention the proctor cannot help you with the actual test questions. I'll just clarify that. But they can help you out if there are any technical issues or you have a question about something logistical. All right. So now that we've gone through what the TOEFL Ibt is all about, I'll share information about some of our official preparation resources. And before I jump into them, I'll just mention something that kind of sets our materials apart is that we create these prep materials using actual test content from the past. So you know that what you're seeing here is really in line with what you're preparing for. We also have our TOEFL experts at ETS reviewing our test prep materials, making sure that everything is up to our standards and of the same high quality as the test. So I'll jump right in and start with our guides and books. So you can see here we have multiple publications. We have a test prep planner. This offers an 8-week plan for preparing to take the test. So if you know that's about the time range you're going to be working in, this can be really helpful. And when we talk through sample plans, we'll also talk about some different timelines because 8 weeks might not be your timeline. We also have multiple books, the official guide to the TOEFL Ibt test. This is a really comprehensive handbook and guide to the test that includes some practice tests. And it also includes a writer's handbook. So if something that you're working on is writing skills, that's a really great resource for you there. And then we also have 2 volumes of IBT tests. Each of these contains 5 practice tests. You have the answers, so you can go ahead and check your answers, and scoring guides, so you can self-assess your speaking and writing responses. And both of these publications, the official guide and these practice tests, they're available both in paperback, so hard copy if you like to have the physical book in your hand, and they're also available as ebooks if you'd rather have access to them digitally on the go. All right, moving on to our courses. So one of our newest resources is the official TOEFL IBT prep course. This is a self-paced course. It has lots of content that not only prepares you for the TOEFL IBT questions, but also breaks them down into their smaller skills and helps you build up your language skills in the different proficiency areas. And it comes with a 6-month subscription. So once you enroll, you have access for 6 months. And something that's really nice is that it includes pre-tests, post-tests, with scoring done by the same artificial intelligence scoring that we use for the actual TOEFL IBT. We also have the TOEFL Ibt Mooc. And if you're looking at that and you're like, what is a MOOC? You're not alone. So MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Course. I was going to say multi-something. That's not right. And so what this is a big course that's open to the public. It's self-paced, and it's a great opportunity to get that insider view of the test, get to know the test questions and the format, and also interact with other people who are preparing to take the test through things like discussion boards. We also have lots of videos if that's more your speed, you're more a visual learner. So we have the Inside the TOEFL Test series on our TOEFL TV YouTube channel. And this series of videos is really helpful for getting kind of tips and tricks, hints that are specific to the different sections and question types. So for example, some tips about in the listening section, what kinds of things to be listening for, what kind of intonation to listen for. So this is a really good way to get to know the test and prepare. And then we also have our full mock test, which we released recently. So this video is nearly 5 hours long, and we created it in partnership with our friends at E2 Test Prep. And what they've done for this video is taken a full IBT mock test, and they go through the test with you. They explain the questions. You can download a practice test with it and kind of do it along with them. They explain the answers. So it's a fun way to really go step by step and get an explanation for everything that you're seeing in the test. All right, moving on to our practice tests. I know I've mentioned practice tests on some of these other slides, but what I'm showing here is our resources that are really dedicated as mostly just practice tests. So we have a free practice test that's available online using real past test questions. We also have this thing called TOEFL Practice Online. And what's cool about this is that using TOEFL Practice Online, you can really simulate what it's like to take the test. So this is a digital product on your screen, and it simulates the TOEFL in terms of the timing of the sections, the instructions that show up, really everything. So we often recommend this as you're getting closer to being ready to take the TOEFL, so that you can kind of prepare yourself to be in that test day mindset, and set aside some time to go ahead and take a practice test in the format that you'll be taking the actual test in. And we offer this as a test, but also if there are certain skills you need to work on, we also have kind of mini versions of it. So we offer a speaking only, a speaking and writing, a listening and reading only. So you can really customize it based on what you feel like you need practice with. And then last but definitely not least, we have our TOEFL Go app, which includes practice sets and practice tests. And you can find this on the Apple App Store and in the Google Play Store. All right, so I've just given you a lot of information about the TOEFL IBT test, about all these official resources we have that you can use to prepare for it. So you might be thinking like, okay, that's great, but this is a lot. And what do I do with it now? Where do I start? So I will show you how you can create your own strategic plan to help you get ready for test day. So we have 4 basic steps that we'll go through: pre-planning, making a basic game plan, making a prep schedule, and then putting the plan into action. And before I move ahead into our pre-planning, I just want to point out the phrase game plan. You might be listening to me and thinking, game plan, this is not a game, this is a test. And you would be correct. The game plan is an expression used in English that is really just a way of saying a strategy, a plan for how you're going to do something or how you're going to approach something. So a little tip for you there. Maybe you can work that into a conversation you have in English in the future. All right. So we'll start with pre-planning here. So with our destination, this is all about deciding the what. What do you want to study? Where do you want to study it? What kind of school are you looking for? What country do you want to be in? And here's where you can really start to envision what your goals are and see yourself in this setting where you're studying what you're interested in, living in the location that you want at the school where you're interested in being. You can start to kind of paint the picture for yourself. And then next is setting your score goals. So once you've decided on schools, you can take a look at what their score requirements are so that you can set goals for yourself. And this will help motivate you as well. You know, when you have something concrete, something tangible to work towards, it can really help you stay focused and stay on track. So next is choosing your test date and format. So like I mentioned earlier, you can register up to 2 days in advance of a test. I would recommend registering a little further out than that so that you have time to really plan and get yourself ready. So this next step here is choosing when you want to take the test and deciding, do you want to go to a test center or do you want to take it at home? And then finally, actually taking that step, that plunge kind of, and registering. And this way, when you register, you know, not only are you guaranteeing that you can take the test on the date that you want, but you're also making this commitment to yourself. You're saying, I'm going to do this. This is when I'm going to do it. And then you can start to plan around that. All right, so we're done with pre-planning. We'll move on to our basic game plan. So first thing here is just to get to know the test, understand what you're working with, what you're preparing for, getting familiar with the format, the questions. And the good news is by being here with me right now, you're already doing some of that. So, you know, you can check that box off for yourself. And we looked at some resources for doing this. So things like the MOOC, the massive open online course, the videos, the planner, all of these different things will help you start to get a feel for the TOEFL, start to understand exactly what it is you're preparing for. You'll also want to self-assess. So if you're not sure where your skills are now, it can be hard to know what you need to work on or what you need to improve. So by taking a practice test, or even, you know, if you have an English teacher, getting some feedback from them, you know, if you've taken English classes in the past, looking back on feedback and assessments from there, getting a sense of what your areas of strength are and what areas you might need to work on improving a bit. Next is choosing your TOEFL resources. So, you know, I showed you a lot of them, deciding which ones are going to work best for you in terms of the amount of time you have, the format they're in, the way you like to learn. going through and choosing, okay, which of these am I going to make use of? And then finally, but still importantly, is choosing resources that are related to your destination. So, while you're preparing to take the TOEFL IBT, you're also preparing for a life in another country, right? You're preparing to study abroad and be in this other setting. And so part of that preparation should also include resources that are related to, maybe the schools you're applying to, or the country you're planning on living in, the field you're planning on studying, even your general interests and hobbies, because chances are you're going to seek those out once you're abroad as well. So this might mean selecting materials like blogs about cultural events in a certain city, school newspapers for schools you're considering applying to, maybe social media accounts about like the food scene in a city, sports teams in a certain area that you might want to follow, those kinds of things where they're good opportunities to practice your English while still having a little fun and also preparing yourself for the culture that you're going to be immersing yourself in eventually. All right, so we'll move on now to making a prep schedule. And this is, again, back to kind of the logistical side of things. So since you've registered for the test, you know when you're going to take it, you can start to work backwards from that date to today, or whatever day you decide to start planning. And that way you know how much time you have to prepare and you can make a realistic plan. And we recommend planning out the specific times and resources that you're going to study. If you don't have a plan, it's kind of hard to follow one and stick to one. But doing the work of planning ahead up front will make it easier to jump in and study and prepare later on. If you have a plan ahead of time, then okay, it's Tuesday at 4 p.m. I'm going to listen to this podcast, versus, oh, it's Tuesday, it's 4 p.m. I have a little free time. I'm not sure what I should do. If you have the plan laid out ahead of time, it's much easier to jump in and work on your prep a little bit. Also, I recommend reserving your time. So if you use a digital calendar or maybe a planner, actually scheduling in when you're going to prepare for the TOEFL, prepare your application materials, prepare to study abroad. Something I like to do too is set reminders and alarms on my phone, or you can set them up through your email. And that's another tool that will help you stay committed. And then finally, find some ways to hold yourself accountable. So this might mean having a study buddy. Maybe this is a friend who is also preparing for something, or even just someone who will remind you to do the things you committed to, but someone you can, study with together, or they can send you a text every couple days like, hey, how's your prep going? You might also set up a reward system for yourself. So maybe if, in a given week, you study all the times that you planned to, you give yourself a little treat, maybe a trip to the movies or an extra ice cream, something like that. You can decide what motivates you, what you would feel excited about, and make your own reward system in that way. All right. So finally, putting this plan into action. Once you've decided what your resources are, it's really a matter of gathering your materials, downloading things, making any purchases, and then getting organized. Maybe making a folder on your computer or in your email where you keep materials and links, maybe putting bookmarks in your browser. The idea here really is just to make the materials easy to access so that when it's time to study and prep, you're not thinking like, oh, I got to go find that book and I don't know where it is. And then by the time you find it, you don't have any time left. So really setting yourself up for success by getting a little organized. And then using your accountability tools, following your plan. Maybe you track your progress if that's useful to you, but just sticking with it, staying motivated, doing what you plan to do. And then finally, take your test, get a good night of sleep the night before, apply to your schools, and do the best that you can. So a few reminders and best practices as you're working through these planning stages. First of all, I recommend pacing yourself. So don't try to cram everything into one weekend. You're going to be exhausted and you might not retain much. So research shows that spacing out your study time will help you learn things better, help you retain things better. You might also be more motivated to do 20 minutes of prep versus 2 hours. It might feel a little more manageable. You also want to be realistic. So when you're setting score goals, make sure you're setting them in a way that gives you a challenge and something to work towards, but also that they're realistic and you feel like you will be able to meet those goals you're setting for yourself. Same thing with scheduling your time. Be realistic in terms of how much time you have to prepare. Maybe there's only 1 day a week when you're available. That's fine. But if you try to say, oh, well, maybe I can do it every day, you might not be setting yourself up for success. So just being realistic and honestly being kind to yourself in that way. All right. And remember your motivation. If you start to lose focus, start to lose motivation, remember that you're not just preparing for a test. You're not just filling out applications. You're really preparing for a life in which you're fulfilling your dreams. I know that might sound a little corny, but it's true. You're preparing to travel somewhere else, study something you feel passionate about, and set up this life for yourself that you want. So remember the long term, envision yourself in that setting if you find you're losing focus. And then finally, try to have a little fun. So, incorporate materials that you'll enjoy, set up rewards, make it fun for yourself, and try not to stress too much. I know sometimes that's easier said than done. All right. So we've talked through the plan, we've talked through the resources, we've talked through the test. Let's look at a couple of examples of how this might all kind of come together. And then once we go through these examples, we'll have time to answer your questions. So we'll look at 2 examples here. Our first example is for our friend Danilo. I promise he's not a real person. I mean, he might be, but this is a pretend friend for us. So we'll go through the pre-planning and the game plan phase with Danilo and see how that pans out. So he is looking at engineering programs and he's interested in schools that are in Philadelphia and New York, so in the US. And he's looked into these programs. He's looked to see what scores he needs. He knows he needs a minimum score of 100, and he knows he needs 25 on each section. They're all equally important for these programs. And he's decided that he wants to take the test 3 months from now in late November, and he's planning on taking the home edition. So what's next for Danilo? So his plan, his resources. So in order to get to know the test, he's going to attend a free informational webinar. Maybe, do we have any Danilos tonight? Maybe he's here with us doing this first step. And he decides he's also going to enroll in the TOEFL Ibt Mooc. So as I mentioned, this is a massive open online course. And I'm going to go ahead and just show the page where he would enroll in that. So you can see if he decides he wants to enroll in the MOOC, he can follow the link from our website. I know the links are being shared tonight as well. And so this will bring him to edX and he sees, okay, this is a 6-week course. It's self-paced, it's free. He can read about the course a little bit, see what he's going to learn in it, see who the instructors are. You might see a familiar face here. and then he can go ahead and enroll. So next up, he decides he's going to take a free practice test so that he can assess where he is with his English skills. And when he does this, he identifies reading and listening as areas to focus on. But again, let's take a look at the actual materials here. So the free practice test can be found on the ETS website. You can see here there's a link to launch this free practice test. And so if I click on that, we get some general information orienting us to the practice test. And then we start with the reading section, just like in the actual TOEFL IBT. So you can see this loads here. We have a reading passage to go through. You can read it, click next, and then our questions will start appearing. I won't read through this and answer it in case any of you are planning on taking this free practice test. I don't want to ruin it for you, but know that this is available. And so Danilo decides he's going to take that, and he sees, okay, in reading and listening, I think I need to do a little more work, a little more preparation. So then he thinks about, okay, which official TOEFL resources do I want to use? He identifies the full mock test video. He thinks, I kind of like the idea of learning along with these two guys who are showing me everything. And he decides also to enroll in the official prep course, as well as purchase some TOEFL practice online tests so that he can prepare for that test day environment as he gets closer to the test. And because he's focused more on reading and listening, in addition to a full practice test, he decides he's also going to do one that's just for reading and listening. So let's take a look at a few of these. So we can see on YouTube, he can access this full mock test video. You can see it clocks in at 4 hours, 36 minutes. So plenty of time to work through here. And you can see the video has these kind of segments and breaks. So you can jump in wherever you want to. You don't have to watch it all the way through. You might decide, okay, I want to start with the listening section and just watch that segment. You can do that. And then we'll take a look at his official TOEFL IBT prep course. This is where he can learn all about the different test questions and build up the skills that he needs for each of them. So we have all 4 sections here. He might decide with speaking, he wants to do a pre-test, get some initial feedback. And again, he has 6 months of access to this, so he can work through it at his own pace. And then finally, for TOEFL practice online, when he's ready, he can check that his computer meets the system requirements and then go ahead and purchase the volumes that he wants to use to study. And then finally, looking at his destination-related resources. So we said he's looking at engineering programs and he's interested in schools that are in Philly and New York. And so maybe he decides, okay, I want a podcast. And he finds the Engineering Reimagined podcast that he can start listening to those episodes. And so in that way, he's practicing English, but also getting some information about the area he's going to be studying. He also finds the student newspaper at NYU, the Washington Square News. And he also finds this cool blog called You Wish You Knew for local events in Philly. So these could be some of the types of resources where he decides, okay, each week I'm going to listen to one podcast episode. And every day I'm going to read a couple new articles in that school newspaper. And, each week I'll read that blog. So in this way, he's able to integrate official TOEFL prep materials with resources that will help prepare him culturally and academically for the content area he'll be studying and where he will be. All right, we'll look at one more sample. Here we have our friend Vanessa. And so Vanessa's pre-planning her journey will be a little bit different from Danilo's. So she is looking at pharmacy programs, and she's interested in schools that are in Sydney, Australia. And she knows that her overall score needs to be 105. And in looking at a few programs, she's seen that her speaking and writing scores need to be a little bit higher than reading and listening. And she's decided she's going to take the test in early October. So she has about 6 weeks to prepare, and she's going to take it at a test center. So what does this look like now for Vanessa? So to get to know the test, she decides she's going to start watching some of the Inside the TOEFL Test videos on the TOEFL TV YouTube channel. And for a practice test, she's going to download the TOEFL Go app and take a practice test there. So let's take a look at the YouTube channel. You can see here we have our Inside the TOEFL Test official preparation and advice videos, a couple other videos and playlists. So if I click here, it'll start playing.
Hi.
We see our friend Michael from TOEFL Land. So Vanessa will start using that to prepare and get familiar. And then she can go to the App Store or Google Play to download the official Go app. And then when she takes her practice test, maybe she sees that her skills are pretty even across the board, but she knows she needs higher scores in speaking and writing because of her program requirements. And so she decides, those are areas where I'm going to need to spend a little extra time. So the resources she chooses, she's really into ebooks. And so she decides that she's going to download the official guide to the TOEFL IBT test, especially because she knows that writing is one of the skills she needs to work on. And she has her writer's handbook in that publication. And then she's also going to download the official TOEFL IBT tests so that she can have some extra practice tests to work through and take a lot of practice tests within the next 6 weeks or so that she has. And she'll also, again, because she needs more practice in speaking writing, she's going to purchase the TOEFL Practice Online Speaking and Writing. So let's take a look at a couple of these books. So we have the official guide. So you can see she has this whole PDF with the whole guide here. There are also additional digital resources she has access to. And if she wants to skip ahead to that writer's guide, she can go right ahead to the writer's handbook for English language learners. And here she can see there's lots of information about different components of writing skills. So from grammar to mechanics to organization, development, there's lots that she can work through here. And then in her official TOEFL IBT tests, here she can start working through these practice tests. So she can decide which section she wants to work on. Maybe she wants to start with reading. You can see she has a timer and she can start going through. Again, I won't read this to you. I don't want to spoil this for anyone, but she can work through those practice tests at her own pace. And then in terms of her other resources, we said that she's interested in pharmacy programs and she's looking to go to Australia. So she might decide she wants some blogs, some podcasts, and she's also a sports fan. So she finds this blog, MedEd 101, that has lots of really good information for pharmacy students. She might decide to listen to the Grammar Girl podcast that has lots of tips on writing because, again, she's all about really beefing up those writing skills. And then she decides she's going to start following the Sydney Swans on social media, which is an Australian football league. team. So she's going to, stay up to date on their posts, read their articles, see what they're linking to, watch some games. All right. So I know I've given you a lot to think about, but the main kind of premises here are set goals, make your plan, follow your plan, and try to have some fun along the way. So thank you so much. I know now we'll have some time for questions with Lucas. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen so we can have more of a conversation here.
Yeah, that's perfect. Faye, thank you so much for this presentation. Our time is passing so fast because it's a pleasure.
I know.
We have a lot of nice comments here in our chat in YouTube, like this one from Vinicius. Such an importance to have this kind of incentive in Brazil to us Brazilians. Thank you so much, Vinicius. It's our pleasure to host this event. I would like to open, Faye, the Q&A with some of the questions that we received earlier in our Instagram account. We open a question box and select some of them to answer on live here.
Sure.
If you agree. So let's start with them. Guys, feel totally free to ask any questions here on live too. Okay. So the first one, Faye, is speaking is often the stage most dreaded by those taking the TOEFL here in Brazil. Do you have any tips on this step of the exam or on how to prepare better to feel safer?
Yeah, so we hear this a lot. I know a lot of people can feel intimidated by speaking. And I used to work on developing speaking questions. So I have a lot of firsthand experience with that. One thing I would say is that something that's nice about the TOEFL is that when you're speaking, you're talking to a computer, you're recording your responses into a microphone. And so you don't have the pressure of another person sitting right there looking at you, maybe kind of judging or reacting to what you're saying. Nobody knows if you're like fidgeting with your hands while you're speaking, or, that's something where it's kind of maybe reassuring to know, okay, I'm speaking my response into a computer. Someone's going to listen to it later, but I don't have that pressure of an in-person conversation. But also, practice speaking out loud to yourself. Talk out loud to yourself. Talk to other people in English as much as you can, even if you feel kind of intimidated by it. And really, really practice. I won't say practice makes perfect, because what is perfect, but practice makes progress. And I think the more confident and comfortable people feel when they're giving their responses, the easier it's going to be to speak their best.
Yeah, so nice tip. Yeah, it's a nice tip because it's totally different, right? You're not talking with a person, you're talking with a computer. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Do you have any data which test stages Brazilian students tend to score higher or lower?
Yes. So we do every year we look at average scores by country. We actually release a report on this that can be found on the ETS website. And so I have the latest data from Brazil. And the total average score is 90, and it looks like generally people in Brazil tend to score a little bit higher on reading and listening and a touch lower on speaking and writing.
So the first question was right?
It was asked for a reason, right?
Yeah, okay, so accurate. Perfect. And the people has this question. So why is the validity of the TOEFL doesn't last longer, and what is the validity of the TOEFL?
Great question. So TOEFL scores are valid for 2 years from the date you take the test. And this is the industry standard for English language proficiency scores. And the reason is your proficiency can really change significantly within that 2-year span. Language is one of those skills where if you don't use it, you lose it. And so if you take a test 10 years ago, that may or may not actually reflect what your skills are like today. And you can also, improve your skills greatly over time. So within that 2-year window, after it's been about 2 years, things may have changed. So at that point, it's really time to reassess.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. You said about the TOEFL's models. I think one question is the main differences between the TOEFL IBT and the TOEFL ITP. The question here is in terms of the test content, you will have differences between them?
Yes. Yeah. So we didn't really talk about ITP much tonight, but the difference between IBT and ITP, probably the biggest difference is that the writing sections are not the same. So in IBT, we have 2 essays that people have to write. Whereas in ITP, there's a section, it's called structure and written expression. And it's more focused on grammar, but not on actual writing something on the test. We do now have speaking tasks on both tests, though. ITP did not always have a speaking component, but now it does as well. And then in terms of reading and listening, they're pretty similar, but reading and listening are longer on IBT. So it's a little more rigorous in general. But on our website too, we have much more information for people who want to know more about that.
That's perfect. So we are inviting you all to enter the website to check more about these technical details, but we can't escape no more from speaking. So we have to practice. No problem. Okay, guys, thank you so much for the new questions here. Some of them, not the new ones here. One of them is regarding the characteristics of the tests and level of difficulty. What are the differences between the online and face-to-face TOEFL exams?
Okay. There's really no difference. It's the same test, the same content, the same types of questions, whether you're taking it at home or at a test center. So really the only difference is whether you're there in person at your test station or whether you're taking it from home.
Okay, but
yep.
Here we have a complement of this question that I think Marco and Maria Eduardo. What we can and can't do in the home edition.
What you can and can't do. Okay. So like I said before, you can't ask the proctor for help on the actual test questions. Can't do that at the test center. Can't do that at home. And I know we have a link we can send out with more information about this, but a couple of main points. Let me see here. So at home, you do need to show your area. Like I mentioned, in the test center, there's kind of a security check in person. At home, it's with a camera. At home, you need to, just checking my notes here. It's been a while since I've looked at the at home. So you will need to check your equipment ahead of time. Make sure you are in a room alone. You can't have other people in there. You don't want, someone sitting next to you or in the room. You need to be in there by yourself. And you need to be in an area with privacy. So you can't do the home edition from a cafe or a library. Something like that is not accepted. You have to actually be in a private location. You also need to make sure that your testing area is clear. You don't have any other books or notes or anything around. And if you want to take notes, you need to make sure you're doing that on a whiteboard where the proctor can see. So you can't be kind of like writing secretive things off to the side. Not that you would try to do that. And you also need to make sure that the proctor can see you at all times during the test. So make sure you don't walk away or leave the room or something like that. And then one more thing I'll say, and this might sound kind of silly, but try to avoid doing anything that looks suspicious. So like if you keep looking off to the side, it might look a little fishy, right? Or if you keep talking out loud to yourself, the proctor might be kind of wondering, like, why are they doing that? So yeah, avoid looking suspicious. Those are the main points. And again, we have a link we can send out that has more info there.
Okay, I'm gonna ask here to send in the chat, but those are good directions to us. And one more question here. In general, how does exam correction works after you ended the test?
Mm-hmm. So reading and listening are scored automatically. And that's why you can see your scores right at the end of the test. With speaking and writing, it's a little different. I know I mentioned a little bit during the presentation about artificial intelligence and raters, and some of that might have sounded a little like science fiction-y. But so the writing and speaking responses are scored by both human raters and artificial intelligence. So this way, so the raters are highly trained, they work through a centralized scoring system, and they don't see your name, they don't see your face, they don't know anything about you. So again, going back to that, fear of speaking and worrying about speaking in person, the rater, they're completely unbiased. They don't see you, they don't know your name, they don't know anything about you really, and there's a different person listening to all your responses. And so speaking is scored a combination of those human raters with the artificial intelligence scoring. And with writing, it's exactly the same thing. We have people looking at the written responses, and we also have very sophisticated artificial intelligence listening to that, reading them. And so those scores get combined and computed and turned into the score that gets reported out.
Perfect. That's good to know. All the best practices, the technology and people looking for us.
Yeah, that's our goal.
Yeah. Faye, I have just one more question here by João Pedro. What are TOEFL's advantages over Duolingo English test?
The Duolingo English test. So I will say TOEFL is accepted by far by a greater number of universities and institutions. So I know I showed a slide showing all the places, countries, schools where TOEFL is accepted. We are accepted by more than, I think it's 11,500 institutions in over 160 countries. I believe the Duolingo test is accepted by about 4,000 institutions, so less than half. And I know certain institutions that were accepting it during the pandemic have since decided that they're not accepting it anymore. And then one other point is that the TOEFL Ibt was designed specifically to be a test of academic English communication, so specifically around the kinds of tasks you need to be doing in English in an academic environment, whereas the Duolingo English test does not have that basis.
Yeah, that's perfect. Faye, thank you so much for all those tips. Unfortunately, our time is up, but I really want to thank you so much for your precious time in the name of all of us of Star Foundation. It was such a pleasure to hear you and to understand all of those opportunities with ETS through the TOEFL exam. And I hope you all enjoyed as much as I did, guys. And I really invite you to respond to our NPS research that we are putting now in the YouTube chat. So Faye, do you want to maybe make a disclosure with your final maybe message to us?
Sure. Yeah, no, just thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. It's really great to get to share this information, learn more about what you all are doing, reach this audience, interact with this audience. And I hope we'll hear about your journey. You know, we're TOEFL's on social media, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we always love hearing success stories of when people take the TOEFL and it allows them to reach their goals. And I'll also give a little plug for our MOOC that I'm in. I think I showed you there. I'm one of the teachers in that course. That's a free course open to everyone. So if you're just curious, if you just want to see what it's all about, you know, go ahead, follow the link, sign up for the MOOC, and start to get a feel for the TOEFL, because it's free and it's fun.
That's awesome to have something free, so accessible for us. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you for the audience, and thank you so much, Faye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys.